Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Appreciate you tuning in. What we got today, we're going to go over my top baits for the month of June. No matter the conditions, I will have some variation of these baits tied on at all times through the month. It's just, these are my go-tos for this time of the year. And I want to thank everyone that has subscribed to the channel. I truly appreciate that. You guys that aren't subscribed, I appreciate you tuning in. And consider hitting that subscribe button. My analytics show that like 80% of people are returning viewers but not subscribed. If you guys hit that button, it helps us out tremendously and helps more people to see the channel, helps us to grow, and hopefully help some people out on the water. But without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to start with the easiest first, and that is a Texas rig plastic of some sort. And I'm usually throwing this on, this is the Strike King Rage Bug, and this is in the June Bug color. This is my go-to color. And if you guys follow the channel, you know I love these things. You've got all the different appendages. Pop those little things apart. You get some crazy action out of these things. And they're pretty durable. You catch several fish on one bait. But I'm Texas rigging these on usually about a 3/0 hook, an EWG hook, 3/0, and where I'm fishing that is I'm taking and throwing it in laydowns, any kind of brush, any kind of cover and structure that I see that I can target with it. That's what I'm going for. And one big thing about this bait is it's not just in that structure. A lot of times you get bit on that fall, but also a lot of times swimming this thing back slow to the boat, I catch a lot of strikes as well. So that's something to keep in mind when fishing this. It's not just pitching that cover and reel it back real quick, unless that's the pattern that you're on. If you're catching all those fish in that cover, then you can run that pattern and be pretty safe. But I don't like to peg the weight on these because I like to let that weight slide down and let this bait free fall behind it. If I'm fishing a lot of heavy cover, I will peg that weight to stop it from getting separated. But if not, then I like to leave it like this so you have that free floating, more natural bait behind it. My setup for throwing this, I'm throwing this on the Abu Garcia Veritas. It's a PLX, and this is the 7.6. It's a heavy power, fast action rod. Got the snappy tip on it, and enough power to get those fish out of that cover and away from it so they don't get you tangled up. And the reel I'm using is, it's a Daiwa Tula 100, and this is the 7-to-1 gear ratio. And I've got a 14-pound Seagar fluorocarbon on here for flipping in that stuff. But that's my setup for this one. And if that's one you guys hadn't tried, that's something to give a shot. Next up, we'll get into one of my favorites that I fish a majority of the year. And it's not just a June bait for me. And that is the bladed jig of some sort. And what I'm using on this bladed jig is, this is the slobber knocker. And then, of course, you can do the chatterbait Evo, the jackhammer, or this sneaky little chatterbait Mini Max. And I also saw that they're starting to make this in a micro. And I saw that at iCast, they are coming out with a tungsten Evo Elite. So I am eager to see that. What I'm using as my trailer on these pretty much all the time is the Hog Farmer Bait Spunk Shad. And this is the 4.5 version. And that's for my full-size baits. If there's a smaller, I'm throwing, say, the Mini Max or something, you have other options to throw. Okay, so what I was saying is, if you're throwing one of these smaller ones like this Mini Max, or even the Jackal Dare Break, which is tiny bladed jig, You can get something like this 6 cents shindig. And this is in the Smalley smoke color. It's kind of a grayish with some purple and black flake in it. Really good looking trailer on those smaller chatterbaits. And then one other option is the 6 cents juggle minnows. And it's just a little smaller profile. It's not as long as that spunk shad. This is maybe a 3.5 to 4 inch bait, but you could even cut that down a little bit and make it fit to whatever you wanted. But those spunk shads do come in different sizes. You can get them, I think, in a 3.5 and a 5.5, if I'm not mistaken. So you do have options there as well to be able to do something different. I know a lot of people that like to use the kamikaze swim-ons, buy big bite baits as their chatterbait trailers. There's just so many options when it comes to that. Everybody has their own thing, but these Hog Farmer spunk shads is hands down my go-to when it comes to fishing bladed jig. Show you this one we got rigged up real quick with a spunk shad on it. So you can see it. It's got this is the green pumpkin shad color, and this is a Tennessee Magic spunk shad. We got the green pumpkin blade on it. Just a good looking bait altogether. And the rod I'm throwing this on is a 13 fishing Fate. It's a 7.4 moderate action, medium heavy power. And I'm throwing that with the Daiwa Tatula 100 again, and this one's 7-to-1 gear ratio. I like to be able to keep a little higher gear ratio when I'm fishing these, so I can keep that thing above that grass a little easier without having to work as hard as, say, a 6-to-1 gear ratio. I know it's not a huge difference, but it does help. I'm also throwing this on the 14-pound fluoro. I believe this one is the Shimano Mastiff, actually. And that's one that I got from Omnia to test out, and I'm really liking that line as well. Next up, we will get into, again, another one of my favorite categories, but this one doesn't last long enough for me. I love fishing vegetation. I love fishing matted vegetation, and I love fishing frogs. So that leads us into what we're looking at here. And you've got your toad style frogs, your top toads. And I've got one tied on, I'll show you in a second. But you have, say, your 6 cents Vega if you want a popping frog. Or if you look, that Strike King, that thing's chewed. They have annihilated this thing, and it's still catching fish. The hooks in that thing are great. My hookup ratio with that one's great. And the Pad Crasher is also by Booyah. That's another good one I like. Now here's one of those top toads rigged up, and you can see it's on a screw lock hook. Pop that off there so you got that screw lock in the head. Screw that thing on, and you just pop that guy up in there, reel him across, and those little legs just making some crazy action. And if you notice, this one does have a weighted hook in it. Helps get a little further casting, but they cast good without it. But I have just the original hooks too that work really well. And then another little sneaky option that I like to use is to downsize my frogs when it's in the middle of frog fishing, and that's what everybody's out there throwing. It helps sometimes to downsize that presentation. And the Jackal Kiera, I'm not sure how to pronounce it exactly, is the best one I've found to do that with. And this is a good looking little frog. This is actually the Kiera S2, and what that is it has these little Colorado blades on the back to make noise, cause a little flash. But if you notice the color on this thing, it's got that glittery belly. And what I use this for a lot of times is fishing pads when you see those little bait fish getting knocked up on top of those pads and they're flittering around on top. And this helps to mimic that really well. They see that shimmer of those bait fish, so you're dragging this across, and that helps to mimic that really well. As far as a rod that I'm throwing that on the Daiwa Tatula XT, and this is a 7.4 heavy fast, and I'm throwing it with a Daiwa Tatula 100 reel, but this is an 8-to-1 gear ratio. And the reason I like the 8-to-1 is because when they take that frog under, I want to be able to take that slack up as fast as I can so I can set that hook and get those fish out of there. And I keep that heavy power rod to be able to drag those fish out of there and not have to worry about them digging in deeper. The faster you can get them out, the faster you can get them to the boat, the better off you are, and the more likely you are to get your hands on that fish. The little variation that I have is when I'm throwing that top tote, I have it on, this is a 13 fishing Fate, but this is just a 7.1, and it's a medium heavy, but it's a really stout rod, more like a heavy. But it's a 7.1 and medium heavy power, fast action. And again, that Daiwa Tatula 8-to-1 gear ratio, be able to get it out there and get it back to you, not have to worry about those fish taking off and you not being able to get that hook set because you can't get that slack picked up. Both of these, I do have the Power Pro. I don't have any of it, or I'd show it to you, but it's the Power Pro 50 pound in the moss green. That's the line that I use for my frogs. I know some people like to go up to 65. I just feel like I can rip this stuff through that vegetation a little easier. It's a smaller diameter, and I can get it through that vegetation a little easier. So next we will go to the poppers. So a popping bait of some sort. This is the Berkeley Bullet Pop, and this is the 70. So it's a 70 millimeter bait, good looking little bait, got your feathers on the back, 2 trebles, big deep concave mouth for that good popping action. It makes a lot of noise, spits a lot of water, and that's a really good one. I like that one. And then this one, I believe it's a Lucky Craft G Splash, and I just really like the color on this one. It's got that olive green back with that yellow lateral line down the side, and this one, it's got more of a lip here on the, and it just makes a little different sound. This one doesn't have the split ring on it. I had to put a split ring on it. I put a split ring on all my poppers. It makes it a lot easier to tie to, and I like the oval rings better than just the circle ones. You don't tend to tie in that gap. So when you're tying onto those split rings, it's really important to make sure you're tying into the double and not the single part of that split ring, because you can get abrasions and stuff on your line from that. And then I've got a sneaky one for you with that too. I'll pull my frog rod back out here, and I actually have this tied on my frog rod right now. And this is the Zoo Pop from Snag Proof, and they made this, and they make another one called the Zoo Dog, and it's a walking style bait. I don't have it, but this Zoo Pop, I was curious about this thing. I was curious about how it was going to work, and I've been very surprised at how well it works. I have fell in love with this thing. So I wanted an option to where if I've got some thick mats, but I've got an opening out in the middle of them, that I could throw a popper, and you have to deal with those treble hooks, and I don't like messing with all that in that vegetation. I don't typically throw a popping frog because excuse me, you don't get the same action. You don't have the same type of mouth. It's a little different action. I'm not throwing this in a situation that I would throw a normal popper. This one I will throw in a situation where I would throw a normal popper. But also, this works really well for skipping up under any kind of overhangs, any kind of laydowns, way back under docks. This thing skips incredibly well. But my hookup ratio on this, every fish that has hit this bait, and I've probably caught 10, 12 fish on it so far. Every fish that has hit it, I have hooked and got to the boat. And it's been a phenomenal little bait. You've still got your feathers on the back. There's no treble hook in it. You have no treble hooks whatsoever. And it's just like a hollow body, just like a frog, but you've got that double hook in the back. And this is a sneaky one that you guys really need to try out. I'm looking forward to getting some of those zoo dogs and trying them out as well, because I think that could be one in some heavier vegetation situations to have that walking bait in that profile. I think it would be a big deal. And that's it for that one. So that leads us to our next one. And it's kind of a similar category, but is another topwater, and that's your walking baits. And this is the 6 Cents Catwalk. And then one of the best actions I have found, and that's that Strike King Sexy Dog. That's the walking action of this bait. How easy it walks is hands down the easiest walking bait that I've used. That Catwalk, you have to use probably, I would say it would do better with mono, but these I can throw on fluoro and they walk great. If I had some floating line with that Catwalk, I might like it a little better. I've caught a lot of fish on it with the fluoro, but I think having that line up a little higher in the column and not wanting to pull that bait down so much, that's something I have to try with that one. But this Strike King Sexy Dog has been a phenomenal bait. And then a good budget option is the H2O Express. And you can get these at the Academy Sports, and these are, I mean, they're almost identical to a Lucky Craft Sammy, and they're crazy good for the price that they are. I hadn't bought any of these in a while because I bought so many of them at one time. They were like $3 and something a piece. And yeah, you may have to end up changing the hooks out or something, but the hooks that I've had in them from the stock hooks, I've caught fish on, I've caught big fish on, and not had to change them until they get wore out. And then we've got another little sneaky finesse style for this category as well, and that is the Lucky Craft Sammy. I can't remember the actual size of this one, but just to show you in comparison, that's that Catwalk, that's that tiny Sammy. So just a lot different presentation. Of course, I'm going to be throwing that on a lot lighter line, probably on a spinning setup, because I don't have an actual BFS bait casting setup, which is something I need to invest in. If you guys have any good recommendations, hit me up in the comments and let me know what you guys think. If you notice, I didn't tell you on my popper, my rod and reel, because it's the exact same setup that I throw my walking baits on. I have the same one for this, and this is a moderate action, or moderate action, a medium heavy rod, 7.4, 13 fishing bait. And again, it's a Watutola 100, and that's on an 8-to-1 gear ratio, because as I'm walking that bait back, I like to be able to pick up that slack, and same thing with that popper. I don't want to leave too much slack out there. The reason I like that moderate action rod is it helps to not pull those hooks out of that fish's mouth and tear big holes in it. Lets you play that fish a little bit better, and just helps so much with getting them back to the boat. That is the big thing, is not overpowering the rod. Because if you go with a lot stiffer rod with these treble hooks, a lot of times you will pull those, and it will drive you crazy and make you mad, and you'll lose a ton of fish because of it. Once I switched to a moderate action rod, it made a world of difference. So if you haven't tried that, it's something to consider heavily. And also I'm throwing this, again, this is 14-pound fluoro, and I believe this is off that Mastiff, that Shimano Mastiff as well. I don't believe I went over my chatterbait rod setup. Did I? Yeah, I may have. But anyways, we're gonna explain something else to you. This is a moderate action rod as well, medium heavy power. And the reason I throw my chatterbait on that, a lot of people like to throw a glass rod or what is it, a hybrid style rod that's composite and glass. And the reason for that is you want a lot more give in these chatterbait rods. It gives it a little better action, but also it helps to get that fish back to the boat. I know that's a single hook. It's not your normal like treble hook, but this is what a rod that you would normally use for your treble hook baits like that, crankbaits and stuff like that. It makes a great chatterbait rod. It helps to get those fish back to the boat. When I switched to that moderate action on my bladed jigs, it really upped my landing ratio. Okay, so one thing we didn't get into is where am I throwing these baits, what am I looking for. I kind of went over with that Texas rig what I'm looking for, but with my bladed jigs, I'm looking for any kind of vegetation that I can get really close to, and sparse vegetation, not heavy vegetation, with this slobber knocker. That is this thing's downfall for me, is bringing this thing through a lot of grass. It doesn't rip through as well as a chatterbait. If I'm fishing a heavier grass, I will switch over to a chatterbait that excels in grass situations. If I'm fishing over the top of that grass, or if I'm fishing any kind of hard structure, lay downs, anything like that, rocky points, anything of that sort, I'm throwing that slobber knocker because the action and my hookup ratio has been so much better. Okay, so next we'll get into the frogs. Of course, I'm looking for any kind of vegetation to fish these things around. I like a lot of thick matted vegetation, throwing, say, the Booyah or the Strike King. Of course, any kind of pads, anything like that. Looking for a lot of hydrilla or milfoil, anything of that sort. But around my pads, I really like to throw this. When I see those bait fish getting knocked up, I really like to throw this thing. So, also a good place for these frogs is being able to skip them up under a overhangs. You got all these banks with all these overhanging trees that are really close to the water. You can skip these things over there, and also back under docks and stuff like that. You can get these up under there really well and trigger some good bites. And with these paddle tail style toads, those I will fish some over mats, but it's going to have some broke up stuff in those mats for me to be able to get those legs kicking, and or close to the edges of those mats around that vegetation. And I will also take those things and use almost like you would like a buzz bait or something. I'll throw that thing in if I know I've got some underwater vegetation, throw that thing and bring it across the top of it. Okay, so next we've got our poppers, and I'm looking for grass edges, long tapering points, any kind of underwater structure that I know is there that I can get this thing close to and draw those fish up. That's going to be, I mean, you've got these rattles in this thing, plus you've got that popping and spitting and all the action that this thing's doing, making all kinds of crazy noises. So I'm getting close to any kind of vegetation I can with that, just not in the vegetation. Unless I'm throwing that zoo pop, I will throw it in the thickest of any of it and feel 100% confident that I'm going to get that fish out. And then my walking baits, I'm going to throw in the same situations that I would my popper. I'm going to be throwing these around any kind of structure that I can get close enough to without having to worry about hanging it up. Be throwing it along those grass edges, on some points, rocky points, some long tapering points looking for. These fish are moving out from these spawning areas, and they'll be going basically backwards from the way they came in for the spawn. So they'll move out from these spawning bays, they'll hit those points, and they'll hit every piece of structure on the way back through there. They'll start piling up, and some of those fish are going to stay in those areas, but some of those fish are going to go to their summer hunts out deep, and that's where they're going to spend the whole summer, and then in the fall they'll start moving back in a little bit. But that's basically a breakdown of what I'll be doing this June. Of course, I'll have several other rods with me. Anybody that's ever seen me on the water knows I carry way too many. I'll have me a big swim bait rod with a Chad shad or a big mag draft or a coal shad or something tied on, trying for that crazy bite, hoping to get on that bite pretty big and be able to get into some good fish with that. I got that new swim bait rod, that big new glide bait rod that I bought, and that thing, I'm liking it, so I'm hoping to get out and catch some fish on it real soon. But I'm going to wrap this up. I've got long-winded again and took too much of your time already, but again, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Consider hitting that subscribe button. We've got that giveaway. It's going on right now. You got one more week to get on that. It's 2 videos ago. You go back, you comment on that video, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and you'll be in on it. And I think it's a little over $100 worth of stuff that I put together, just a bag that I put together just as a thank you to the people that are subscribed to the channel. And again, if you're not, I think it was like 80% of people that was returning viewers that aren't actually subscribed to the channel. So consider hitting that button. It really helps us out, and I appreciate it. You guys have a good one.